The article I chose was examining the additive effects of check-in, check-out to coping power. It was written by Sarah C. McDaniel and Allison L. Braun, and this is presented by Kimberly Metz. The social significance of this study is to provide students with disruptive behaviors, coping mechanisms, and tools to help them regulate their emotions. The gap in research that is being addressed by this research is what would happen if you combine coping power with check-in and check-outs. The purpose of this study is to provide students pre-social skills such as following directions and solving problems appropriately, as well as self-regulation skills um, such as ability to be self-aware, to evaluate situations and control one's actions to be more successful in the classroom. Um, the participants were Corey, an 8-year-old boy that was in 3rd grade. He is diagnosed with ADHD and was placed on medication. The second participant is Kareem. He's a 10-year-old boy in 4th grade. He has no diagnosis, but he was held back. The last participant is Jeremiah. He's an 11-year-old 5th grade student, and he has no diagnosis. All of these students were chosen due to their disruptive behavior in the classroom, as well as having parental consent to do this experiment. The setting took place in a rural Title I upper elementary school in the southeast. The school has a PBIS system in place. The setting was chosen to keep consistency for the students, so it was in their classroom so they could implement the strategies that they were given or taught in a setting that they were going to be in. The dependent variable is the daily progress report that they receive. It's to evaluate small increments of daily behavior change across the study. The measurement is each behavior per period was rated on a Likert type scale, which is the 0, 1, 2, or 3. The total possible points for each day, for each period was rated, and it was 40 points. And then their goal, each student's goal was 80 points, 80% of points received for each student or for each day. The independent variables are the check-in, check-outs to coping powers. And then they employed a baseline condition and 2 intervention conditions. The check-in, check-out is with a mentor teacher. They're responsible for checking the students in and out, setting behavioral goals, tracking data, and providing feedback. When checked in the morning, they ensure students had all materials necessary for participating in school activities that day, including their daily progress report. The coping power is small group lessons. There were 16 of them. They provide students with opportunities to discuss and practice remediated skills such as problem solving, conflict resolution, entry into positive peer groups, and self-control. So here are the results from the study. Here are the 3 graphs. So it shows the baseline, and then they have the coping power data next, and then they have the coping power plus the check-in, check-out, and then they remove the check-in and check-out and have the coping power again, and then they have the results of when it was reinstated with the check-in, check-out plus coping power. So the data does not clearly demonstrate changes in behavior across phases. There were multiple instances of overlap between baseline, intervention, and withdrawal. 2 of the 3 students experienced overlaps with their baseline and intervention, the first intervention. and the overall trend was an improvement of behavior for all the students, but there was no functional relation with 2 out of the 3 students. Jeremiah's baseline was already scored at a 76% compared to Kareem, who scored an average of 49%, and Corey, who averaged 53% on their daily progress report. By the end of the experiment, Corey scored 90% on his daily progress report, Kareem scored 90% on his daily progress report, and Jeremiah scored 92% on his daily progress report. They were unable to find a functional relationship, like I said, between Corey and Kareem's decrease of disruptive behavior and an increase of scores on their daily progress reports due to the limited number of probes. This prohibited them from making a conclusion about a functional relationship with disruptive behaviors associated with the introduction and removal of check-in and check-out. They were able to find a relationship in Jeremiah's study due to the coping power and check-in, check-out having 3 demonstrations of effect. So the authors concluded that one of the 3 participants having a functional relationship between adding coping power and check-in, check-out with decreased disruptive behavior. They did admit that there was many limitations to the study that may have caused there to be overlap between baseline data and intervention. Let's see, although one of the okay, so I believe their conclusions were appropriate for their findings, that it was inconclusive. They clearly stated based on the lack of probes, they were unable to conclude if the intervention was a direct link to the decrease in disruptive behavior, since only 1 out of the 3 had a functional relationship. So the author stated one limitation that they saw was that they only had 2 direct observations. They consider the direct observation as gold standard for measuring behavior. They only included direct observation as a secondary probe. There was only 2 direct observations of disruptive behaviors per phase. The other data was collected through the daily progress report. They realized that the behavior or lack of behavior could be due to the time of the day that they observed, and that they only saw for 30 minutes in the classroom from 2 separate days. The author stated that for future observers, they may want to use observation as a primary dependent variable and observe multiple times per day. Additionally, the author stated that using teachers as the check-in, check-out mentors is not best practice. This is typically performed by different school personnel, such as the counselor or paraprofessional. They stated that the classroom teachers could have rated students more favorably on the daily progress report when they had provided positive or corrective feedback to the students, but they do not have clear evidence of this. Which leads that to a threat to internal validity, because they did not have internal observation agreement, and having the check, and because for that reason they had, or not for that reason, but because they had the teachers as the check-in, check-out mentors. That also could lead to observer bias. Like we said, they could have skewed the data a little bit. And I do agree that the author was inconclusive with their study, but they provided next steps for the future researchers and the best ways to match Tier 2 behavior to the intervention that best meets the students' needs and interest for progress monitoring.